Hello, and welcome to Lesson 2 of this Introduction to Calculus with Wolfram U. The topic for this lesson is functions. So let's begin with a brief overview of the lesson. So last time we learned that calculus is all about change. So you could have changing speed or changing volume, and then you could apply calculus to study such phenomena. But a little more precisely, calculus is about quantities that change with respect to other quantities. So, for example, the distance traveled by a car changes with respect to the time. So, you think of time as being an independent variable, and then distance depends upon the time taken. Or the surface area of a cylinder varies with respect to the radius and the height of the cylinder. So, what we need is a precise way of defining such changes. And that's what we'll do in this lesson. We'll show you how to do this using functions in the Wolfram language. So, let's begin by defining a function. But before doing that, I need to speak about sets. So, a set is a collection of objects. So, for example, you could talk of the set of even positive numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, etc. And then an element of this set is an object that belongs to it. So, for example, 2 is an element of the even positive numbers, while 3 is not an element of that set. So, what's a function? Well, a function is a rule that assigns to each element x in a set capital X exactly one element called f of x in a set y. So you think of them as being x and y as in this example. So you got a function sine x, which is a trigonometric function, and its graph, its plot, is a wavy form. But the point over here is that this x-axis over here is the domain of the function, and that is all the real numbers, while the function values over here go between -1 and 1, so that gives you the range of the function, -1 to 1, while the entire y-axis is called the codomain. So you have a function, and then you have the domain, the codomain, and its range. And the question is, how do you make such functions in the Wolfram language? So here's how you do it. You have the function f of x equal to x square. So for every x over here, doesn't matter what x is, you simply square that number or expression. So for example, f of 2 is clearly 4. But you could also have a function that depends upon two variables, x and t. So that's like a pattern for x, and that's like a pattern for t. So here's the function g, and then you can define the function and then find its values. The g of 2 comma 3 is 33. So when x is 2 and t is 3, then the value of the function is 33. Okay, another thing you might want to do with the function is to find what the graph of the function looks like. So the graph is just a set of all ordered pairs x and f of x for that function. So you think of that as being pairs of x's and y's. So here's a plot of the function f of x equal to x square between 0 and 10. But you could also put in x squared directly over here in the plot function and get back just the same result. Okay, so question now is, how do you find the value of a function for other expressions? So let's say f of x is x squared, then the value of f at x plus 1 is x plus 1 the whole square. But you might want to simplify that a little bit, so you can do expand of the result and get back the expand version, or you could apply the expand function a little later and get back just the same result. Similarly over here, you've got a function g, and you can put in x plus y for x, and then expand and get back the result. Okay, so the question is now, in how many ways can you define a function? Well, first of all, you could use a table of values like over here. So this is a function which squares a number. So 1 squares 1, 2 squares 4, etc. And you get back a function from this table of values. Or you could describe the graph of the function. So this graph over here tells you that for every value of the side, you have side square on the y-axis. Or you could just use an algebraic formula and get the same function. So functions can be defined in various ways depending upon the situation and problem. Now, here's a practical example to put together what you've done so far. So you want to find the cost of a metal box which has a volume of 100 and whose height is twice its length, given that the top and bottom cost $5 per square centimeter while the sides cost $8. Okay, so the cost is going to be 5 times the top and bottom area plus 8 times the side area. That's the cost function. Now you know the volume is length times width times height, and that's the relationship given to you. Height is twice the length, so you can plug that into the equation for the volume and get back an expression for W, the width, in terms of the length. And once you've done that, then the entire cost for the box can be written in terms of L, the length, and you can use that to compute the cost of the box when its length is 10 centimeters and the answer is $3,410. Okay, now in this example, if you look at the function for the box cost, then you could plug in a length of -1 that still works, but of course that's not a very meaningful length, it's a negative number. You could also try and plug in 0, and this time Mathematica and Wolfram Language will certainly complain and tell you that this is not allowed, it's an indeterminate answer. And we have a function called function domain, which will definitely try and isolate the problems for you. So it says over here that the length of the box should either be negative or positive, not 0 like over here. But of course, you know that in practice, negative lengths are not useful. So you do need to use some common sense when you find the domain of a function. So the context of the problem is everything. Okay, let's go on now and talk about how to decide whether something is a function. So a function, recall, has to give you exactly one element f of x for every x. So here's an example of a plot which is not a function. And why is that? Because for every number over here, you get back 2 numbers on the y-axis. So every number between -1 and 1 gives you 2 numbers vertically. So if you were to draw a vertical line, then that vertical line will cut the plot at 2 points. And so this relation over here is not a function. So the vertical line test is a very useful way of finding out whether a given plot gives a function or not. And having done all that, let's now talk about the different kinds of functions. So a very nice, simple kind of function is a piecewise function. So for example, here's the real absolute value of x, the absolute value. It's a v-shaped function. But you could also use the built-in piecewise function to do just the same thing. So piecewise will say that the value should be -x for -x and x otherwise. So that's the same function, but now defined manually using piecewise. Another kind of function that's quite useful in practice is a symmetric function. So you could have an even function which has got a plot that's the same on the left and the right, so to speak. So the value of f at -x is the same as the value of f at x. Or you could have an odd function in which the plot now looks like it's negative on the left and positive on the right in this case. So the value of f at -x is negative of the value of f at x. And finally, you could have functions which increase or decrease. So here's the square function, and if you plot it, it first decreases, goes down, and then increases. But here's an example of a much simpler function which neither increases nor decreases, it's just nice and flat and constant. So there are a wide variety of functions in calculus, and each of them lets us solve different kinds of problems. So that's the end of today's lesson. So just to summarize, functions tell us how quantities change with respect to other quantities. You can use either words or tables or graphs or formulas to define a function. And if you're given a graph, the question might be, is this a function or not? Well, you can apply the vertical line test. And then finally, functions can be piecewise or even or odd or increasing or decreasing and all kinds of other classifications, but all of them prove to be useful in practice. So in the next lesson, we'll go over the basic functions which you'll require in calculus. But before doing that, do review today's lesson, go over the exercise, and make sure you follow functions because they are at the very heart of calculus. Once you know functions, you can begin the study of calculus. So I'll stop over here. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Thank you.